maybe we can start off. I don't know who wants to take the first answer here, but maybe you can start explaining what actually Olympus DAO is, and what makes it so different to any other cryptocurrency out there. Maybe, I don't know, Matt, do you want to start, or Aaron?
Aaron, do you want to start?
Yeah, I could take that if you'd like. Okay. So I can
yeah,
go ahead if that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Great. So the question, just to repeat, is what makes Olympus DAO kind of special, leading into this new version of DeFi 2.0, right? Like, that's the question. I just want to make sure. Is that it, Cryptocito?
Yeah. Awesome.
To really understand the real utility of Olympus DAO and this reserve currency, I think we need to take a splash back into the past, maybe about a year and a half ago. And about a year and a half ago, it was probably like March 2020, the market all dropped around the world. And when the market dropped, a lot of these cryptocurrencies just tanked, right? Not only just cryptocurrencies tanked, specifically stablecoins became unstable. If you looked at DAI was trading at maybe 90 cents to $1. And people were viewing as this DAI and other stablecoins as supposed to be a good store of value, in that it jumped off its peg, and they couldn't understand why. Now, one of the main reasons that it jumped off the peg was that people were over collateralizing their ETH in order to get DAI, right? So they would give ETH, like $100 worth of ETH, and got $50 worth of DAI. The situation that existed was that DAI and the MakerDAO community created this interest rate model to encourage people to sell their DAI back to their platform or buy DAI from it. The MakerDAO system didn't own their own liquidity. So in case there was a bear or a bull market that ever occurred, the protocol itself couldn't burn or just mint its token based off of its own liquidity. Instead, it was dependent upon other people to come back to the platform, engage with the platform when a random market situation occurred. And that's really, 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 really hard to coordinate at a large scale in a global manner. And that's what really brought this first conversation of owning one's own liquidity, which was genesed and created with this thing called Fei protocol. Fei protocol is this stablecoin in Ethereum's ecosystem. And they said, why don't we just own our own liquidity, very similar to a central bank, right? How does the US central bank work? They print their own money and they give the money out to other people, or they issue bonds. By controlling its own money, they're able to determine and come up with policies based off of macro and microeconomic situations. So then Fei protocol introduced this thing called protocol owned liquidity, or this treasury mechanism. But they introduced it specifically to address DAI's situation of going off the peg. And they've had somewhat success with it. They find some stability there. But then here came Olympus DAO, which Olympus DAO said, we could really do a step further than just owning one's own liquidity, right? If we own our own liquidity and we have a treasury of different reserves, such as DAI, such as Frax, and all these other stable coins in our treasury, we now can mint a currency that represents the collective of that treasury. So when somebody's part of Olympus DAO, in essence, they're managing these treasury of assets and how to deploy this treasury of assets by holding this reserve currency. And that is one utility of that reserve currency. And then that reserve currency, you can generate even further utility, which Olympus DAO is doing now. So that first real innovation that Olympus DAO brought was that, look, now you can have some type of token that can own this treasury of assets. And these assets itself can back this token. So instead of MakerDAO situation where DAI was controlled by an interest rate model and people had to come in and sell their DAI and buy DAI and there was liquidations and all this mess, instead, OHM could be backed by this treasury of assets. So in case they entered a bear market or entered a bull market, the protocol itself determined when to mint or burn OHM, which now all of a sudden created a system that was able to own its liquidity very similar to a central bank. And then they defined these really cool game theoretic mechanisms that encourage people to hold on to their OHM, not just sell it. So that was the real innovation that OHM really brought in Fei protocol and things of that sort. Owning one's own liquidity by creating a treasury. And then what the reserve currency did was that the reserve currency OHM represents the assets in that treasury that back that OHM. And that led to this new innovation of now projects owning their own liquidity, which solves a bunch of other issues I can talk about later. But like that was that real innovation. That's why a lot of people are excited about OHM in general. I hope that was a good enough understanding.
There was a very good answer. And we can also hear you are super passionate about these things.